Is Patrick Star a robot? Like an actual robot? A machine that's made to look like our dear pink friend? And I know that sounds insane because it is. Then again, SpongeBob is also a show where a fire can be lit underwater, a squirrel lives inside a glass tree dome, and a single-celled organism builds a wife out of a CCTV. So the question is not, can a robot Patrick exist? I think that's totally normal for Bikini Bottom. The real question is, why would Patrick need to be a robot? Because if Patrick is really a robot, whether it's since day one, swapped somewhere in the show, or if it only happens sometimes, then Patrick does a pretty good job of hiding it. And if that's true, Patrick Star might be pulling off the greatest trick Bikini Bottom has ever seen. So the Patrick is a robot idea didn't come out of thin air, as you might all expect. It really blew up because Alex Bale framed it inside a bigger lens, the idea that Bikini Bottom might already be in the early stages of a robot takeover, or better known as the robot invasion conspiracy. And the conspiracy is, honestly, pretty seductive, because robots in Bikini Bottom aren't rare. They pop up as character copies, consumer products, security systems, theme park animatronics, and as invented gadgets from geniuses like Plankton and Sandy everywhere. Which is weird because Bikini Bottom is not exactly a sci-fi society. I mean, half the town is still prone to mass panic caused by mad snail disease and butterflies. That's where the robot invasion angle comes from. The idea is that Plankton has built so many robots over the years, and most of them fail. But instead of throwing them away as scrap metal, what if he recycles, redesigns them for various purposes, and then quietly spreads them across town? Since there are so many similarities between Plankton's inventions and these gadgets throughout the city, it makes us think Plankton could set these robots up everywhere in order to activate them one day for his grand world domination plan. And that paranoia gets extra fuel because SpongeBob keeps flashing the same nightmare in the distance. Future Bikini Bottom, chrome everywhere, citizens replaced, robots running the place. So once you become suspicious of this, the next scary thought is obvious. Is it just the gadgets that get replaced? What if some of the characters we're watching are robots too? And that's why Patrick gets dragged into this theory more than anyone, because no one in the cast is as wildly inconsistent as he is, especially up in the head. One episode, he can barely count to 5, and the next, he's dropping a comment that sounds like it came from a philosophy textbook. So now we're all raising our eyebrows. Maybe we're not always watching the same Patrick. Maybe sometimes it's robot Patrick we're looking at. However, I just feel that something much bigger is going on here. I mean, if the robot Patrick idea is real, then at least it should have a clear footprint somewhere, right? We need a specific, obvious moment so we can actually see the signs clearly. And no episode leaves a bigger footprint than the day Patrick's head comes off and gets replaced. Which brings us to the so-called smoking gun of this theory. In the episode Patrick Smartpants, Patrick falls off a cliff while hunting for jellyfish. SpongeBob would later find him at the bottom, but his head has come off. SpongeBob panics, finds the head not far from him, and sticks Patrick's head back on. But now Patrick becomes a totally different version of himself. He talks in clean mannerisms, debates people over some intelligent stuff, and is pretty much cold to anyone who isn't on the same wavelength as him. This episode itself plays around the smarts versus empathy trope. Patrick would later choose to be dumb again over losing his friends, but that's not really what's important here. The big reason people keep coming back to this one is because of what happens the moment Patrick's head gets reattached. We cut to inside Patrick's skull, and we're not looking at a normal brain. We're looking at gears that are dusty and covered in cobwebs, which indicates that Patrick's brain hasn't been properly running for a long time. Then at the end, when they remove the wrong brain, there's a shot where you can see an actual plug inside his head. So yeah, rewatching Patrick Smartpants in this context, it's not hard to call this episode suspicious, especially when this episode could be the first time we see Robot Patrick in action. But here's where the real investigation actually starts, because one episode could simply be a gag. A single robot shot could just be a coincidence. So does the show keep hinting at the same mechanical bits after this episode? The answer is yeah, it kinda does. Like in Sing a Song of Patrick. One day, Patrick is trying to find some inspiration to write a song, and then we can see that same inner mechanization playing inside his head.
Come on, you stupid brain! Work!
Which indicates that Patrick could be smart if he wanted to be. It's just that the machinery in his brain gets really cold because it rarely turns on, and takes some effort to get running. Then there's Rule of Dumb. In this episode, Patrick is spiraling down after a hard day of being a king. And in the middle of his conversation with SpongeBob, there are sparks and smoke coming out of his head. And mind you, this is not just an exaggerated visual of Patrick's dizziness. SpongeBob reacts to this as if he could see that the springs had popped out. So yeah, after Patrick Patrick Smartpants, whenever Patrick tries to force his brain into a higher gear, the show just keeps reaching for that same imagery. It's a mechanism that sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. Now, is that enough to prove he's a robot? Nah, not yet. It could just be an exaggerated visual, right? But at least it gives us something better for our investigation. It gives us a trail. Because this whole brain mechanism could explain why Patrick often switches between smart and dumb in just a few seconds. One good example is from the episode Squidtastic Voyage, where in the middle of trying to survive in Squidward's stomach acid, Patrick suddenly comes up with a solution.
We could filter the CO2 through our ballast tanks, refire the engines, and ride the shockwave out of here.
Wow.
And then 2 seconds later, he's back to being Patrick. That could be the sign of Patrick's inner machinery running for just a few seconds before it switches back off. However, if you think that's mind-blowing, we haven't even got to the biggest part of this theory. There is one character who clearly knows something about this, because they react like they've seen the switch before. And unfortunately, at one point, he slips. If there's any problem including robots in Bikini Bottom, I think everyone's suspicion immediately goes to the same guy, Plankton. Like I said earlier, since we've seen how many random robots exist in day-to-day Bikini Bottom, some of them even resembling the kind of stuff he builds, it's not a crazy leap to ask, what if Patrick is just another of Plankton's gadgets? The chance feels even bigger when SpongeBob hands us this moment in SpongeBob's Big Birthday Blowout from Season 12. In the middle of planning SpongeBob's birthday party, Patrick has one of those smart moments, which Plankton reacts to like this.
It's almost time for me to take SpongeBob on that tour so you guys can decorate his house.
I guess even a broken moron can be right once a day.
And I'm not gonna lie, that line does sound like a slip. Like Plankton actually witnessed his own machine acting up, because he recognized the behavior. So for a moment, it feels like we're about to solve this whole case. Plankton does something with Patrick, but fails for whatever reason. And then this episode is the one where he acknowledges Patrick is not a total liability. Boom, we go home. Except, I don't think that's the whole explanation. I feel like there's still one cog missing in the machine. Because, let me ask you something. If Plankton had the power to build a robot Patrick, why would he ever choose Patrick as his guy? I mean, sure, Patrick has ridiculous strength. If you could control that, that would be useful. But Patrick can't even control his own thoughts most of the time. Patrick would just forget the mission halfway through, eat some important stuff, then blame the mission failure on SpongeBob. You could argue Patrick is just a failed prototype. An early model that never worked quite right. But that already feels too speculative, and I can't find any proof to back it up. And if you go back to the so-called smoking gun, Patrick Smartpants, there's this one detail that messes up the Plankton story. As it turns out, SpongeBob accidentally used brain coral instead of Patrick's real head when he reattached it the first time. That's the source of Patrick's sudden leap in intelligence. Which is a huge difference because I don't think Plankton is out here manufacturing living brain coral. Besides, most of Plankton's inventions are made of pure metal and rarely resemble any living being. Now, a quick nerd footnote here, because this matters more than you think. Brain coral isn't random stuff made up for the plot. It's a real type of coral. It looks like a brain in real life, but it's not literally a brain. Corals don't have brains. What they do have is a simple nervous system. You could picture it as biological wiring. And Patrick is a starfish, an echinoderm, aka the animal group famous for regenerating their body parts. Plus, we've seen Bikini Bottom play fast and loose with brain swapping as a concept anyway. Episodes like Whirly Brains and The Nitwitting are basically built on that premise. So in SpongeBob world logic, the explanation for Patrick Smartpants could be something way more gross and honestly more plausible for the show. SpongeBob accidentally slaps living neural organisms onto a starfish who could modify his body, and Patrick's brain basically boots into a different mode after that. And that's why I'm not comfortable calling Smartpants Robot Patrick. We can't prove that. What we can prove, however, is that Patrick's body can be modified, and thus becomes a question of what else can be swapped in and out of Patrick, and why? Let me put it like this. If there is anything mechanical happening inside Patrick's body, it probably didn't come from some shadowy villain crawling through his window with a wrench. Patrick might be modifying his own body by himself like a cyborg. And yes, reading that sentence already feels like committing a crime. Patrick, a cyborg? Buddy, are we solving a theory or writing fanfiction? Yeah, I know it sounds like a huge leap at first, but newer seasons of SpongeBob actually drop something that changes the game. Because at some point, the show straight up gives Patrick something that should not be in his possession. A time machine. And no, not in Sandy's dome, not in Plankton's lab, it lies inside Patrick's parents' house. In the Patrick Star Show, Patrick's bedroom has this recurring device called the Time Closet. It's been used throughout many episodes in the Star Show for different purposes, but mainly by Grandpat just to cause problems. And here in Season 2, there's an episode that might just be the answer to our investigation. Too many Patricks. So to put it simply, because if you haven't watched the Star Show, this sounds like nonsense, Patrick somehow becomes some kind of children's party celebrity, because that's his new gig apparently. They even had these ads playing on TV. And he gets overbooked. Too many birthday parties, same day, different places, classic problem for normal adults, horrifying problem for Patrick. See that disclaimer in the corner? Turns out Squidina's solution, Patrick's new sister by the way, to this attending lots of parties at the same time problem is by bringing in more Patricks from different timelines. There's Pat the Hapless from medieval times, there's Cave Patrick, which I think is the same as Patar from and the big one for our theory, Patron, a future robot Patrick. There you go. The show said it right out loud for us. More than one Patrick can exist at the same time, and they can even fill in for each other. But I can already hear the comments. Yeah, but that's the Patrick Star Show, that doesn't count. Well, the main show does drag that concept back into the mothership. In Season 16, there's a special episode called SpongeBob and Patrick's Timeline Twist-Up, which I also made a video about some time ago. And the premise hinges on Patrick's time closet going on the fritz and messing with the history of classic SpongeBob plots. So now, whether people like the Patrick Star Show or not, the franchise has officially done the handshake. So it's a rule that carries over to mainline SpongeBob. Which means the idea of Patrick being replaced sometimes doesn't even need Plankton anymore. Patrick has his own doorway that can casually pull in other Patricks. One Patrick handles whatever's happening on Conch Street, another Patrick is off doing whatever Patrick does, and the Patrick we're watching might just be the one who showed up today. Now this is the part where your brain tries to save itself. Okay, but Patrick can't build that, right? He's still Patrick. Well, unfortunately, he kinda did. We can see that clearly in the Patterfly effect. In that episode, the time closet stops working for some reason, and Squidina basically laughs at him and says, rebuilding real time travel would take decades of research and education. It's almost impossible. So, what does Patrick do? He goes to the Bikini Bottom Institute of Technology to get the education. He spends years studying, graduates, basically becomes Einstein, and he ends up successfully reinventing the time closet. That is the moment we lose the right to say Patrick could never. Apparently he can. He just doesn't unless reality forces him to. Which ties directly back to what we've been tracking since the beginning. Patrick doesn't get smart gradually. He spikes into competence under pressure and then drops back down once he doesn't need it anymore. So now we've got a modern canon upgrade that changes everything. Patrick has access to multiple Patricks via the time closet, and he's proven he can maintain the system when he needs to. But that's still not the creepiest part in this story, because did I mention earlier that Patrick could be a cyborg, right? Yeah, that does happen in this corner of the franchise too. In the same episode, the whole plot kicks off because Patrick wants his mother to become a race car. No, not become a racer, a race car.
My mother is going to be a race car!
So he goes back in time and starts to train a younger version of his mom to be a race car. He feeds her a car engine, makes her drink a whole barrel of oil, and lets her modify her own body to become a car.
We did it!
Even if you treat it as cartoon gross-out logic, it's pretty clear. The whole Starfish family can modify their own bodies as they please, and go back in time to change whatever they want. That's pretty common in the Star Show. So is the Patrick Star robot theory true? Well, the answer is yes, but not in the simple Plankton-made sleeper agent way like we all thought it was. The real answer is messier and, honestly, more like SpongeBob. Patrick is a character who can be swapped, duplicated, and patched together through backups, body mod logic, and literal timeline nonsense because the Starfish family is just modular, both their body and their existence. I guess this whole theory should be named Patrick Star Modular Theory, now that I think about it. Which unfortunately brings up the only question that actually matters now. How many Patricks have we been watching this whole time? Actually, that would re-explain a whole lot of those classic episodes. And if that's true, then Patrick isn't the only one we should be worried about. Because in my other video, Sandy Cheek's spy theory finally solved, I went after the exact same nightmare for Sandy. Is Sandy still the person we used to know, or are we watching someone else wearing her friendly face? So if this theory just made you see Patrick differently, yeah, just wait till you see how different Sandy's story looks. I'll see you on the next dive.